Silence. That's what's missing from your life right now, chosen one. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence that comes when noise finally stops masquerading as purpose. You've been running, sprinting actually, through corridors of obligation, climbing ladders, society constructed long before you were born, chasing destinations that shimmer like mirages in a desert of cultural conditioning. And somewhere in the mechanical rhythm of alarm clocks, commutes, meetings, deadlines, and the endless cycle of productivity metrics, a voice has been whispering. At first, it was so faint you dismissed it as exhaustion. Then it grew louder, more insistent, until it became impossible to ignore. That voice isn't your anxiety speaking. It isn't burnout. It isn't weakness or mental fragility. That voice is the frequency of the divine, breaking through the static of everything else, and it's saying something that terrifies and liberates you simultaneously. Quit your job, not because you're failing, not because you're lazy or irresponsible or unprepared for real life, but because what you're doing right now, this thing that consumes 40, 50, 60 hours of your week, this thing you've been told defines your worth and validates your existence, was never meant to be your primary assignment. It was a classroom, a training ground, a temporary station, not your destination. And the creator of the universe, who knit your DNA with intentionality before the foundations of the world were laid, is issuing a divine interruption to redirect you towards something your soul has been starving for, while your mind kept feeding it the wrong meal. This redirection isn't about laziness, it's about alignment. The second volume of the 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life explores exactly this paradox, how the pursuit of conventional success often becomes the greatest barrier to divine assignment. And I've left that resource in the pinned comment below for when you're ready to go deeper into this recalibration. But right now, in this moment, you need to understand that the restlessness gnawing at your chest isn't a character flaw. It's a homing signal. The exhaustion you feel isn't merely physical fatigue accumulated from long hours or demanding responsibilities. This is soul exhaustion, the kind that sleep doesn't fix and vacations don't cure, because it originates from a fundamental misalignment between who you were created to be and what you're currently doing. Metaphysically speaking, your spirit is experiencing what the mystics called the dark night of the soul, not as punishment, but as awakening. Your energy body is rejecting the frequency of environments that don't match your divine blueprint. Just as a violin string vibrates at a specific frequency and produces dissonance when forced to match an incompatible tone, your spirit is creating friction against activities, relationships, and obligations that clash with your authentic design. This friction manifests as depression, anxiety, insomnia, physical illness, or that hollow feeling that settles in your chest on Sunday nights when you realize the weekend is ending and Monday is coming. From a scientific perspective, your nervous system is providing biofeedback. When you engage in activities aligned with your purpose, your brain releases oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, the neurochemicals of fulfillment, connection, and motivation. Your vagus nerve, that crucial communication highway between your brain and body, functions optimally, keeping you in parasympathetic mode where healing, creativity, and growth occur. But when you spend 8, 10, 12 hours daily in environments that violate your authentic self, your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your nervous system gets trapped in sympathetic activation, that perpetual fight-or-flight state, and begins breaking down. Your immune system weakens. Your digestion suffers. Your sleep quality deteriorates. Your body is literally screaming through symptoms that you're in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. This isn't dramatic or mystical. It's measurable biology confirming what your spirit already knows. Historically, every prophet, mystic, and spiritual revolutionary experienced this same divine interruption. Moses was a shepherd when God appeared in the burning bush and reassigned him. He wasn't failing at shepherding. He was actually quite good at it, having spent 40 years mastering that craft. But shepherding sheep was preparation for shepherding people, and the day came when God said, "Enough of this, I have something else for you." David was anointed king while still a shepherd boy, but he didn't immediately quit tending sheep and march to the palace. He continued his current assignment until the fullness of time arrived. Then when the moment aligned, everything shifted rapidly. Elijah was taken from one assignment to another through supernatural transportation. Paul was literally knocked off his horse, blinded, and rerouted from persecuting Christians to becoming Christianity's greatest messenger. The pattern repeats throughout sacred history. God calls people out of what's familiar, comfortable, and socially acceptable into something that looks illogical, risky, and often socially criticized, because the divine assignment always operates on a different value system than human convention. This is where the battle intensifies inside you. One part of you, the part connected to infinite wisdom, recognizes truth when it hears it and is ready to leap. Another part, the part programmed by society, family expectations, and fear of judgment, begins constructing arguments about responsibility, bills, security, and what people will think. These competing voices create internal war that leaves you paralyzed, exhausted, and uncertain. Let's dismantle the fear-based narrative first, because it's built on illusions disguised as logic. The argument about financial security assumes your job is your source. It isn't. Your job is a channel, but channels can change. The source, the one who feeds birds that don't plant or harvest, who clothes wildflowers more beautifully than Solomon in all his glory, that source doesn't depend on your current employer's payroll system to provide for you. This isn't naive optimism or reckless faith. This is understanding how provision actually works in a universe governed by divine economy. When you operate in alignment with your divine assignment, provision flows through avenues you couldn't orchestrate or predict. Opportunities appear, resources manifest, connections emerge, doors open that weren't even on your radar. But when you cling to the familiar channel out of fear, you block the flow of what's trying to reach you through new channels. The metaphysical principle here is that energy follows intention. When your intention shifts from self-preservation to divine alignment, the energy reconfigures everything around you to support that intention. Psychologically, this fear of leaving financial security reveals a deeper issue. You've been conditioned to believe your worth equals your salary, your identity equals your job title, and your security comes from a paycheck. This conditioning began early. As a child, adults asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Not "Who do you want to become?" or "What impact do you want to make?" The question itself programmed you to equate identity with occupation. Then, education systems funneled you toward careers based on market demand rather than soul design. Then, culture bombarded you with messages that success means climbing corporate ladders, accumulating wealth, achieving status. Decades of this programming created neural pathways in your brain that automatically equate leaving your job with failure, irresponsibility, or regression. But these neural pathways can be rewired through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections based on new beliefs and behaviors. Every time you choose faith over fear, obedience over security, purpose over comfort, you're literally rebuilding your brain's architecture to support your divine assignment instead of your ego's agenda. The ancestral wisdom traditions understood something modern culture forgot. There's a difference between vocation and occupation. Occupation is what you do to earn money. Vocation is what you're called to do, from the Latin vocare, meaning to call. Historically, people understood these might be the same thing or completely different things, and neither scenario was shameful. A blacksmith might be called to serve his community through metalwork. His occupation matched his vocation. A king might be called to serve God through governance, again alignment, but a tent maker named Paul was called to spread the gospel. His tent making was merely how he funded his vocation. The apostles were fishermen called to be fishers of men. Their vocation replaced their occupation. The key is discerning which situation applies to you, and the dissonance you're experiencing suggests your occupation and vocation are diverging, and the time has come to honor your true calling, even if it costs you the familiar. What happens metaphysically when someone continues in an occupation after their vocation has shifted elsewhere? Their light dims, not because God withdraws his presence as punishment, but because they're spending energy maintaining something they've outgrown, instead of investing energy in what they're growing into. Imagine a seed that refuses to crack open because it's comfortable in the shell, safe in the darkness, protected from the unknown. That seed will never become the tree it was designed to be. The cracking open is uncomfortable, vulnerable, even frightening, but it's essential for transformation. You're that seed right now, chosen one, and the soil around you has changed. The conditions are right, the season has arrived. But you have to let the shell crack. You have to let the old form break so the new form can emerge. This isn't destruction, it's metamorphosis. The caterpillar doesn't die when it enters the chrysalis. It dissolves into biological soup, and from that soup, a completely new creature forms using the same raw material, but reorganized according to a different blueprint. You're in the chrysalis moment. The job you're in isn't wrong or evil. It simply served its purpose. It got you here. But here isn't where you're staying. Biologically, your body knows this before your mind accepts it. Have you noticed how certain environments now trigger physical reactions? Maybe your stomach knots when you pull into the parking lot. Maybe your jaw clenches during meetings. Maybe you get headaches Sunday evenings. Maybe you can't sleep Saturday nights because you're dreading Monday. These aren't random symptoms. They're your body's intelligence, communicating that you're in an environment hostile to your authentic self. Your gut, which contains more neurotransmitters than your brain, is often called your second brain, for good reason. It processes information about safety, alignment, and truth faster than your rational mind. That gut feeling, telling you something is off, isn't paranoia or anxiety disorder. It's ancient wisdom encoded in your biology, the same instinct that kept your ancestors alive by signaling danger before their minds could analyze the threat. When your gut screams, "wrong path," and your mind argues, "but it's logical," your gut is usually right because it's connected to a deeper knowing that transcends logic. This brings us to the concept of divine timing, which operates completely differently than human timing. In human timing, you plan, work, achieve, and advance through linear progression. You climb the ladder one rung at a time. You build a career brick by brick. You accumulate wealth dollar by dollar. This creates the illusion that success is purely about effort, strategy, and persistence. But divine timing introduces supernatural acceleration that defies human logic. When God moves, decades of preparation compress into moments of manifestation. People you needed to meet appear suddenly. Resources you required materialize unexpectedly. Doors you couldn't open swing wide without effort. The Israelites wandered 40 years, then crossed into the Promised Land rapidly. Joseph spent years in prison, then went from prisoner to prime minister in a single day. Esther was an orphan, then became queen through a series of events she didn't orchestrate. The pattern reveals that much of what we call waiting or delay is actually preparation happening in the invisible realm, and when the fullness of time arrives, everything shifts quickly. You might be one decision away from the acceleration point, the moment when everything you've been preparing for suddenly manifests. But you'll miss it if you're clutching the old assignment with both hands. The fear keeping you in the wrong place often disguises itself as virtue. I can't quit because I have responsibilities. I can't leave because people depend on me. I can't walk away because I made commitments. These statements sound noble, mature, and righteous, but they're often fear wearing a costume of responsibility. True responsibility means stewarding your life according to divine design, not human expectation. True maturity means obeying God even when it looks foolish to people. True commitment means honoring your covenant with your Creator first, even when it requires breaking agreements with others. This doesn't mean being reckless, irresponsible, or cruel. It means understanding that your primary obligation is to the one who created you, and when he says move, you move, even if others don't understand, don't approve, or don't support the decision. Noah built an ark when there was no rain. Abraham left his homeland without a map. Moses confronted Pharaoh without an army. Mary said yes to a pregnancy that could have gotten her killed. Every major biblical figure obeyed God despite how it looked to others, and that obedience positioned them for their divine assignment. Let's address the practical concern everyone raises. How will I survive financially if I quit my job? This question assumes survival depends on your job. It doesn't. Survival depends on the one who created you, knows every hair on your head, and has already gone ahead of you to prepare your path. When Jesus sent his disciples out with nothing, no money, no extra clothes, no provisions, he wasn't testing their faith for entertainment. He was demonstrating a kingdom principle. When you're on assignment, provision is already arranged. The disciples didn't starve. They were fed, housed, and supported by people God had already prepared to provide for them. This same principle operates today for those who step into their divine assignment. You might not see the provision before you step, but that's the nature of faith. Faith means trusting that the next stone will appear when your foot is in midair, not demanding to see the entire staircase before you take the first step. From an energy perspective, fear and faith cannot occupy the same space simultaneously. They operate on different frequencies. Fear is low vibration energy that attracts more circumstances to fear. Faith is high vibration energy that attracts provision, opportunity, and breakthrough. When you make decisions from fear, you magnetize fearful outcomes. When you make decisions from faith, you magnetize faithful outcomes. This isn't abstract spirituality. Quantum physics confirms that observation affects outcome, that the frequency you emit influences what manifests in your reality. Your current job might provide financial security, but if it's poisoning your soul, dimming your light, and blocking your divine assignment, the cost is higher than any salary can compensate. You're trading temporary comfort for eternal purpose, immediate security for ultimate destiny, the approval of people for the approval of your Creator. That's not a fair trade, and somewhere inside you, you know it. The grief you feel when considering leaving isn't just about losing a paycheck or title. It's about releasing an identity. For years, maybe decades, you've answered, "What do you do?" with your job title. You've introduced yourself through your occupation. You've defined your worth through your position. Leaving that job means releasing that identity. And ego death is painful even when it's necessary. The old you, the version that found security in titles and validation in salaries, has to die so the new you, the version aligned with divine purpose, can emerge. This is the dark night of the soul experience mystics write about. The painful transition between who you were and who you're becoming. The gap between the familiar past and the unknown future. The space where you're no longer one thing, but not yet the other. Most people avoid this space because it's uncomfortable, uncertain, and vulnerable. But this space is where transformation happens. You can't become the butterfly while clinging to the caterpillar's identity. You can't step into your divine assignment while clutching your human security blanket. Something has to give, and what needs to give is your grip on the old. Historically, every spiritual awakening required leaving something familiar. Buddha left his palace, Jesus left carpentry, Muhammad left commerce, Francis of Assisi left wealth. Each departure looked like loss to observers, but was actually liberation, the shedding of what no longer served to make room for what was destined. You're being invited into this same liberation. The job you're leaving isn't your enemy, it's simply not your future. Thank it for what it taught you, the skills it developed, the confidence it built, the people it connected you to, the provision it supplied during that season. Honor what it was without clinging to it as what it will be. Then release it with grace, trusting that what's next is better, even if it looks messier temporarily. The phrase, "quit your job," triggers panic because culture has programmed you to see quitting as failure. But there's a difference between quitting because you're avoiding hard work and quitting because you're answering a higher call. The first is retreat. The second is advancement. The first is escape. The second is obedience. The first shrinks your world. The second expands it. You're not quitting because you can't handle the job. You're quitting because you've outgrown it, because you've been reassigned, because staying there would be disobedience to what you're being called toward. This isn't weakness, it's courage. It takes more courage to walk away from security into uncertainty than to stay where you're comfortable. The world celebrates people who stay loyal to companies for decades, but heaven celebrates people who stay loyal to their calling, regardless of cost. Your divine assignment, the thing you're being redirected toward, might not look like you imagined. You might have expected a clear blueprint, a detailed plan, a guaranteed outcome. Instead, you're getting a direction, a next step, a call to trust. This is intentional. If you saw the entire journey up front, you wouldn't need faith, and faith is the muscle this transition is designed to develop. Faith isn't believing God can do something. Demons believe that. Faith is trusting God enough to obey when His instructions don't make logical sense, when the path isn't clear, when the provision isn't visible, when the outcome isn't guaranteed. This level of trust can only be built through walking, stepping, moving forward without seeing the entire staircase. Each step you take in obedience strengthens your faith muscle, making you capable of carrying the weight of the next assignment. The divine assignment waiting for you isn't necessarily a new job. It might be, but it might not be. Your assignment could be healing yourself so you can heal others. It could be raising your children with presence instead of distraction. It could be creating art that awakens souls. It could be writing words that shift perspectives. It could be building a community that supports transformation. It could be simply learning to rest, to receive, to be instead of constantly doing. Western culture equates value with productivity, but kingdom culture equates value with being. You're not valuable because of what you produce. You're valuable because you exist, because you're loved by the Creator, because you bear His image. Your assignment might involve tremendous action, or it might involve tremendous stillness. Either way, it will require you leaving the hamster wheel of meaningless productivity to discover what meaningful contribution actually looks like for you. Many chosen ones discover their divine assignment involves healing inner wounds that have been driving their behavior unconsciously. You've been running, achieving, performing, proving, all to fill a void that success cannot fill because it's shaped like divine love, not human achievement. That void was created when you experienced early abandonment, rejection, criticism, or neglect. And you developed a belief that you had to earn love, prove your worth, and perform for approval. This belief system became the engine driving decades of striving, and it's exhausted you because the fuel source is fear, not love. Fear-based motivation works temporarily, but burns you out ultimately. Love-based motivation is sustainable, renewable, and life-giving. The transition from one to the other requires healing the wounds that created the fear-based paradigm, and that healing work might be your primary assignment right now. It's not glamorous, it won't trend on social media, but it's foundational. You cannot build a life aligned with divine purpose on a foundation of unhealed trauma. the cracks will eventually destabilize everything. Neurologically, healing trauma rewires your brain through a process called memory reconsolidation. When you revisit painful memories in a safe environment with new resources, your brain can actually update the memory, changing not what happened, but your relationship to what happened. This isn't about forgetting or minimizing the pain. It's about extracting the wisdom without carrying the wound. It's about releasing the charge, the emotional reactivity that keeps you trapped in patterns formed decades ago. Through somatic practices, therapy, spiritual direction, or any modality that addresses the body-mind connection, you can release trauma stored in your tissues, nervous system, and cellular memory. This release creates space for new neural pathways based on love, safety, and trust instead of fear, danger, and suspicion. The person who emerges from this healing process is fundamentally different, not because their history changed, but because their relationship to their history transformed. Ancient wisdom traditions call this process shadow work, the intentional exploration and integration of the parts of yourself you've rejected, hidden, or denied. Everyone has a shadow, the collection of traits, emotions, and experiences you deemed unacceptable and buried. But what you bury doesn't die, it festers. It leaks out through self-sabotage, relationship dysfunction, addictive behaviors, and physical illness. The only way to neutralize the shadow's power is to bring it into light, to acknowledge, accept, and integrate it. This isn't comfortable. Looking at your rage, shame, jealousy, greed, or fear requires courage. But when you do this work, you reclaim energy that was locked up, maintaining the illusion that those parts don't exist. You become whole, not by being perfect, but by being honest. Not by having only light, but by integrating light and shadow into wholeness. Your divine assignment likely involves sharing your story, your healing, your transformation with others who need to hear it. Not from a place of, I have it all figured out, but from, I've been where you are and there's a way through. Authenticity heals. Perfection intimidates. When you share your journey, the struggles, failures, doubts, and breakthroughs, you give others permission to be human, to struggle, to doubt, and to believe they can also break through. This is why your pain wasn't wasted. This is why your battles weren't random. They equipped you to guide others through similar terrain. The Israelites had to wander the wilderness before they could lead others to the promised land. Jesus had to experience temptation before he could help others resist temptation. Paul had to persecute Christians before he could become Christianity's greatest advocate. Your history, even the parts you wish you could erase, are essential components of your assignment. They make you credible, relatable, and effective. The resistance you're experiencing right now, the internal battle between yes and but, is normal. Every major transition involves resistance. Your ego knows that stepping into divine assignment means ego death, and it will fight to survive. Your ego isn't evil. It's just trying to keep you safe using outdated strategies. For years, your ego kept you safe through achievement, control, and people-pleasing. Those strategies worked in certain contexts, but they're now obstacles. The challenge is thanking your ego for its service while refusing to let it drive your decisions moving forward. This requires developing a strong, centered self that can observe ego's panic without being controlled by it, that can hear fear's arguments without being persuaded by them, that can feel uncertainty without retreating to the familiar. Biologically, this transition activates your nervous system's alarm bells because your brain interprets change as potential danger. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, doesn't distinguish between actual physical danger and perceived social danger. To your amygdala, quitting your job and risking judgment from others triggers the same survival response as encountering a predator. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your breathing quickens, Your thoughts spiral. This physiological response doesn't mean you're making the wrong decision. It means you're making a big decision, and your nervous system is responding to novelty and uncertainty the way it's wired to respond. The solution isn't avoiding decisions that trigger this response. The solution is developing nervous system regulation skills that allow you to tolerate discomfort without it controlling you. Through breathwork, meditation, movement, or grounding practices, you can signal safety to your nervous system even when making uncomfortable decisions, teaching your body that change doesn't equal danger, that uncertainty doesn't require panic. The metaphysical principle underlying this entire transition is that you cannot serve two masters. Jesus said, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other." This wasn't about money versus God, though that's how it's often interpreted. It's about any competing allegiance. You cannot serve the world's definition of success and heaven's definition of purpose simultaneously. You cannot pursue cultural approval and divine assignment with equal devotion. You cannot build a life on human security and heavenly trust at the same time. Eventually, you have to choose, and that choice determines your trajectory. One master leads to external validation, temporary satisfaction, and eventual emptiness. The other master leads to internal peace, eternal significance, and ultimate fulfillment. The choice seems obvious when stated this way, but making it requires releasing what your hands are currently clutching, and that release feels like free fall until you realize you're not falling, you're flying. Let's address the practical question. What do I do next? First, get quiet, not as a one-time event, but as a lifestyle. Your divine assignment won't be revealed through noise, distraction, or constant activity. It emerges in stillness, silence, and solitude. This is why you've been craving alone time recently. Your spirit needs space to hear, receive, and process what's being communicated. Commit to daily silence. No phone, no music, no podcasts, no distractions. Just you and the divine. Sit with the discomfort of silence until it becomes comfortable. Listen not for audible words, but for the still, small voice that speaks through peace, through knowing, through gentle guidance that feels right even when it looks illogical. Second, journal what you're receiving. Write down the thoughts, impressions, and insights that come during silence. Don't edit, analyze, or judge them while writing. Just document. Later, you can review and discern, but in the moment of receiving, be a scribe, not a critic. The act of writing activates different neural pathways than thin.